Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. I'm Maria Casillas, joined here by my incredible co-host, Cody Sizemore. We are here to do a little bit of a follow-up on a episode from probably about a month ago, I think it was, Cody, when we talked about one of the clients who was sort of trying to get out of the contract that you had with him or her. And we did a really great deep dive into like, how did you respond to that person and what did that look like? But then we had somebody reach out and say, hey, I really appreciate all of that deep dive, but I'd kind of like a little bit more of they didn't say philosophical deep dive, but that's what I'm going to call it, where it's kind of more along the lines of, what if your client doesn't really see the value anymore? So I think what we're looking at there was kind of an assumption that the reason your client was trying to back out is because they didn't see value, and you handled it beautifully and gave them the value that you promised. But I think that there is kind of this desire to know, okay, I see this. I see that other clients are saying, I don't see the value anymore. And I'm just kind of curious, how do we handle that situation? What does that even mean? And so with your permission, I'd like to just kind of unpack that a little bit today.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I think that in that episode that we talked about, what we kind of covered was, hey, if you're met with this kind of situation, here's how you handle it, or here's
Mm-hmm.
what you do, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think that the approach that we might be able to take today is not necessarily focusing on the what or the how, but more so the why,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Why are
What's
they not feeling
what's
that value?
actually going on there that's causing your client to feel like the program that they signed up for and that you're providing for them isn't valuable, or it's not as valuable as they initially had thought, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that can get to the root of a lot of issues for them
Yeah.
and your future clients as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just going to say, you use the word program. I'm going to say program and or service, because I think a
Sure.
lot of our listeners don't necessarily feel like they have programs, but they're definitely providing a service. So we just don't
Mhm.
want to alienate you if you're not offering an actual program.
Totally. Yeah. So I'll open this up and I will say that I think that when we're met with this type of situation, we can tend to get a little defensive around things
Hmm.
because we take it personally. You've said multiple times on the show that the rejection of people saying no to our services sometimes hurts a little bit more because we're kind of selling ourselves as the product instead of someone who's selling furniture. Like they
Hmm.
say no to that because they don't like the furniture, kind of thing. It's
Right.
nothing to do with you, but in this case it is us, right? So we tend to take it a little bit more personally, and that can lead to us getting a little bit more defensive around things.
Mhm.
But I think that the approach that we should take with this is we should actually be looking at this as a growth opportunity, you know, and maybe just like work with your clients, so maybe they'll approach this to where it's like, hey, I'm not really seeing the value in this, and I think I want to stop or whatever it might be. Um, but more so taking it of like, hey, well, where are the shortcomings here? When we initially, decided to move forward together, we discussed this, and this. On my end, I feel like we've done this and this, and we're going to do that, but
Mhm.
there is something that's missing here, right?
Mhm.
So what is that? So I can meet you where you're at, and I can serve you a little bit more. Um, Taking that approach, it can help you keep that client. It can help you get that client re-engaged again. But then it can also help you make an adjustment for future clients. Because if one person is seeing a lack in certain areas, chances are they're not going to be the only person, you know? Um, and not every client is the same, and we need to keep that in mind. But it is always really good to have that kind of reference around people and around this situation as well. So I think that going into this with an open mind in the sense of trying to learn, just like how we talked about in our last episode, like we don't know everything. right? So
Mhm.
instead of trying to defend, let's ask questions instead.
Yeah, I love that approach. I mean, it's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Just the 2 words, "ask questions," it can be very like, "What do you mean you want me to ask questions?" But it really is such a simple, not easy, simple approach, because not only do we wanna ask questions to, to try to get to the answer, but we wanna ask questions for clarification as well. When they say, "I'm not getting value," can you define value for me? Like what does that look like?
Mhm.
What are we even talking about right now? And don't say that because that sounds very defensive. but you're really trying to get to the root of what is the actual problem. What are some of the things that you're feeling right now? Because we talk a lot about our families because a lot of times that's a point of reference for us. But when somebody's, going a little bit cuckoo. They're fighting with their siblings and then they storm off and they're really frustrated about something. If we just approach, not approach, if we just deal with the storming off, we
Mhm.
have not gotten to the actual root of the problem. We don't know that so and so hurt someone's feelings or that someone is actually not at all hurt by the person there, but something else happened earlier in their day that they haven't yet dealt with. And now it's manifesting in this, rage that they're displaying. And so I think the same thing happens with our clients. I mean, there might be something that is completely unrelated to our services that is affecting their ability to see the value that you're offering. Maybe you're just I'm going to use the word scapegoat here. Maybe you're just the scapegoat for that thing that happened to them. And therefore, they're going to say, well, it must be you. Cody, it must be you. Maria, it must be you. Listener, it
Mhm.
must be you. Now, having that said that, that's not a point of defensiveness. It's not saying that it can't be us. It's just that that is a possibility that, something else is going on for them in their lives. And the same thing goes the other way, Cody. There might be something going on in our lives that has us distracted. It has us, not focused on our clients, and they're feeling that. They're seeing it. They're picking up on that vibe that we're sending, and maybe we are doing that at such a subconscious level that we don't even know it. And so, digging a little bit deeper and like, what are you seeing? Tell me what you're seeing. Maybe they can actually shed some light on that issue for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you bring up a good point that, sometimes the root cause of the disconnect can be on the client, but it can also be on us as well.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, no matter how much we try and mask things, sometimes people can see through it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I can honestly say that I've probably felt that on even my end, for those who have been listening to the show for a number of weeks. Um, I've shared a few things about what's been going on in my life. And for me to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, like that hasn't affected my work at all, I would
Mhm.
probably be lying to you in certain ways. So it is a two-way street. And I think that just being aware of that is important, you know. Um,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
will
last
tell
week
you,
I'm
oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just gonna say last week we talked about, not having to be a know-it-all to know all the answers for everything. And I think the same goes with this. Like, we don't have to be superhuman. We are still human beings. We still experience things on our end. And so to think that we have to act in a way that it doesn't affect other areas of our lives is kind of silly to think that we'd have to do that. But I
Yeah.
do believe that since we are offering a service to somebody and we're being paid for that service, we also have to be aware of how our lives are affecting that interaction and then be humble enough to recognize when it's having a negative effect and then just being able to reconcile that with our clients.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Um, there is actually now as we were talking through things, I actually realized that unknowingly, I actually do something with my clients pretty regularly to try and avoid this whole conversation as a whole, you know?
Perfect. Do share.
Um, so I'm just gonna take a few minutes and just kind of share what that is. So I myself have a program, right? So it's a specific amount of time for with a specific amount of meetings. And if they want to keep going after that, then they can enroll into another
Program.
program.
Mhm.
Um, in my program, I have, 5 meetings initially that are they're pretty curriculum based in the sense that like pretty much everybody has those meetings, unless it makes sense for me to tailor it for a specific person, right? And those meetings, what that looks like is relationship with money, an audit, a budgeting meeting, a game plan session, and then helping them find their why. Those are like the 5 that I like for sure are kind of non-negotiable for me in most cases. But then beyond that, the program starts to open up a little bit more. It becomes a little bit more tailored to that specific person and whatever they're kind of wanting or needing during our relationship that we have together. Um, and one of the exercises that I've been doing with people after we kind of get through those initial 5 meetings that I kind of call like our foundational meetings is I run them through an exercise where I ask them 4 questions. And after every question, I tell them that I'm going to ask them the follow up question, which would be, what else? And I just keep doing that until they tell me, Cody, please shut up and move on to the next question.
Is this like your kid who keeps asking you why, Cody?
Kind of, kind of. Yeah. Yeah. So, so what those 4 questions are is what's working so far? What have you really gotten a lot of value from? What have you enjoyed? What do you feel is yeah, what do you like? What do you think is like being effective? All that kinds of stuff. So what's working? The next question would be the other side of the coin, which is, hey, what's not working? The next question would be what's missing? And then the next question would be, is there anything that you feel like you're tolerating that maybe you shouldn't be? And I tell them to answer it in the sense of focusing on what we're doing and like the process that we've been doing, the tools that they've been getting. Um, but I also tell them to focus on like me as their coach, them as clients to me. And if they're a couple, then I also say like the teamwork and the communication between the two of you as well.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, and to me, what that has kind of done is it allows us to take a step back and it to be like, hey, instead of focusing on all the time, like, where are we going? Where are we going? Where are we going? We can actually take a second to be like, hey, how's it going so far?
mhm,
Right.
mhm,
And by answering those questions, what's working, what's not working, what's missing, and what are you tolerating? That actually paints a really good picture of, hey, well, moving forward, what are some areas that we can double down on that
mhm,
have been working really well for you?
mhm,
Moving forward, what are some things that you feel aren't working very well? And how can we make sure that we get them into a place to where they are working well? Moving forward, is there something that we haven't covered? Is there something that you feel like you haven't gotten support with that's been missing? And how can I serve you that way? And moving forward, is there something in your life, whether it be between us from coach to client, whether it be between the two of you from spouse to spouse, whether it be in your relationships in your own life, whether it be with work, whether it be with whatever it might be, what are you tolerating that maybe you shouldn't be? And how do we move forward from that as well? This exercise really does open the door for you to start moving into a direction that's going to be extremely valuable for that specific client. You're meeting them
mhm.
where they're at and you're supporting them with what they feel like they need as well. And
Yeah.
I've really done that multiple times with a lot of my clients and then basically built out the rest of my program with them. You know what I
Mhm,
mean?
mhm.
Um, and by the end of it, they're feeling very served.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate that. I'm curious, how many what elses do you typically have to ask in order for them to get to what I'll call the core the real response? We'll just call it the real response.
yeah, it depends on the person. There's certain people who will just keep talking and talking and talking and talking. I'll ask
Mhm,
one question and they'll give me like 17 things, you know?
mhm, mhm,
And then there's other people where I'll ask a question, they'll give me like one or two. And I'm like, okay, what else? And then they'll give me one more. And I'll be like, okay, what else? And they'll give me one more. And, it's just, it depends on the person,
Yeah. I'm just curious how many things they have to say to get to the real answer. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times we have that, like, hey, what's wrong? And we'll say something that's wrong, but then we'll get to the next level. And then, two or three down, we're into what's actually going on with us at this moment.
yeah.
And I was just curious if you've seen a trend where most people are not going to they're not going to give you the real answer right away, that you actually have to sort of sit in that discomfort for a little bit with them in order for them to be able to share with you the truth.
So sometimes that rude answer comes out, but I'll just say with this exercise, I don't think it necessarily needs to. If it does, that's a great thing because then it's a very simple like, cool, let's attack this, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but sometimes if they're saying like, hey, what's not working, right? We'll use that as an example. Maybe they say that the teamwork between the two of them, let's say it's a married couple,
mhm,
um, is not very balanced. There's one person that's doing everything, and then there's the other person that really isn't doing anything, kind of thing. Well, they'll tell me that, and we'll see like the surface level, you know, answer, which is just like, hey, communication and teamwork, right?
mhm,
But then we meet next time and we can have a whole session around that.
mhm,
And then
mhm.
we can really get to the root then. I don't
Okay.
think that this exercise is about uncovering the root problem or solving the issues. Sometimes it can be that, if
Mhm,
they say, hey, like, I've been trying to do the cash system for my fund money, but it's just so inconvenient and it just doesn't work for me.
mhm,
Cool. Like we can solve that like on that call. We can
mhm.
figure out something else kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but oftentimes it's more so of like a platform for
Mhm.
future sessions kind of thing.
Okay. So your what else question is less about digging deeper and more about getting as much information as you need to in that
Yes.
session.
Yes. Yep. It's uncovering anything and everything that is working, is not working, is missing, or that they're tolerating. Yes.
Okay. So you're taking notes, you're not solving the problem at that moment.
Correct.
You're it just
Yep.
gives
And
you
again, after we go through this exercise, there might be a couple things to where I'm like, hey, this popped up and this popped up. Here's a
Mhm,
quick thing that we can do, a quick adjustment. Here's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? They'll probably be like, yeah, like, that sounds good. We'll do that from now on. And then cool, that one's done. The simple
mhm,
things, but there
mhm,
might be things that are a little bit more in depth, like the communication or the teamwork, that you can then tell them. I also made note of this. So when we meet next, we're probably going to be focusing on this. That
mhm.
way they know what to expect, and again, you're meeting them where they're at. You know,
Yep.
so
Yep. Yeah, I really appreciate this. I'm going to ask on behalf of our listeners. It goes to what you're saying, and it sort of goes to what we were saying earlier, and that is when you're getting responses from individuals on things that are missing, what's not going well, what are you tolerating that maybe you shouldn't be tolerating? When those responses start to center around you, the coach,
mhm.
how do you make sure that you're not defensive? Um, what do you sort of have in place for yourself? What sorts of responses have you found work really well to accept that, and also not just take on all the responsibility if indeed there is joint responsibility for some of that.
I think it's all about how you open up the exercise in the first place.
Okay,
So
tell more.
I tell them, I literally put in like the Zoom notes. I'm like, here's some things to keep in mind. Um, so as we're going throughout these questions, you can reference this list. And those things to keep in mind were things I said earlier, like the tools and resources from this program, me as a coach to you, you as a client to me, stuff like that, right?
Okay.
Um, so basically I give them permission
Mhm.
to call me out.
So you're giving them that information prior to the actual session. You're not just springing this on them in the moment. They've had some time to prepare.
So yes and no. What I mean by that is, when I tell them that we're going to be doing this exercise, I give them those things to keep in mind
Okay.
before I ask those questions,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So basically what I'm doing is I'm setting it up so that they know that if there's something that's lacking on my end, that they can and should
Mhm.
100% let me know, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I go into this exercise every single time fully prepared to hear something that might refer to me. Now,
Yeah. But it
not
is done.
it doesn't happen all the time, and
Yeah, of course.
I would even say most of the time it doesn't happen, but
Yeah.
it has came up, and it's just one of those things that, like, as you go into this exercise, you just need to know that you might hear something that pertains to you,
Sure.
and you need to be okay with that.
Yeah. So just to make sure I understand and clarify for the audience, when you say you give them these things to think about, it's like literally right before you ask them. They're not actually preparing earlier. It's
No.
like we're
Yeah,
in
yeah,
this
like, I
session.
I,
Here's
like,
the stuff
literally
to
write out
think
a
about.
list.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. That was the part I wasn't quite clear on, and so I'm glad that
Mhm.
I asked for some clarification on that.
Yeah, yep. But as long as you go into it knowing that you might hear something about you, I would just take that and just be like, "Okay,
Yeah. Well, and
thanks for
like you
sharing that."
said, it's an opportunity for us to grow. It's an opportunity for us to learn and for us to just
Yep,
hone in on our craft. So
yeah,
that's
mhm,
really what that is. And we have to look at it that way. And if we don't, then we're gonna just fall like a lead balloon.
mhm,
because because that's just life.
yeah, yeah. So, that exercise is as much for the client as it is for you. And
Hmm.
that's why I love doing it, is because, like, it's one of the few exercises that not just the client grows from that I do, but we
Hmm.
all grow from, you know,
Yeah.
which is really cool. So, if you're talking about how to bring more value to your clients, or, if your client is saying that, the value isn't there, and how do we actually get to the root of what that is and then making the adjustment to do that,
Hmm.
I think that an exercise like that would be very, very beneficial
I
for sure.
agree, and it just dawned on me, I'm gonna share it out loud. This is kinda like paid training. I mean, you're
Yeah,
getting paid
yeah,
by your client, right? And you are training yourself and becoming better, and so instead of you paying somebody else to do that, you're actually getting paid in a way to better yourself. So
yeah,
it's really that's just a mindset shift real quick, it's the
mhm,
way that you look at this, and, so yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that.
yeah, no problem. Alrighty, guys. I think that's probably a good place to end it, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay,
Good
cool.
stuff.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. If this is your first time listening, we'd really appreciate a review, a rating, a share, whatever you want to do. And if it's your 100th time listening, your 200th time listening, thank you so much again and again and again and again. And we hope to catch both of you, whether you've listened every week or whether this be your first time, on the next episode next week. So tune in next week for another episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. And until then, keep building value.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.